Hi, this is Nicholas Bell with IONCINEMA, here to review The Protégé, the latest film directed by Martin Campbell, which Lionsgate is releasing August 20th, 2021. Initially, it was titled The Asset, so this is a nominally better generic kind of title. Campbell, of course, a very notable director whose heyday was probably in the 90s and early 2000s when he did a couple James Bond movies like GoldenEye and Casino Royale, a couple Zorro movies, Mask of Zorro, Legend of Zorro. Personal favorites, of course, would be No Escape, a Barbara Hershey, Mary Beth Hurt thriller, Defenseless, his Edge of Darkness series, and the remake he did in 2010 with Mel Gibson. And also his last film, Jackie Chan, starring in The Foreigner, was also quite good. This was written by Richard Wenk, who, as a director himself, directed the Grace Jones starring Vamp, as well as Just the Ticket in the early 2000s. He has also rewritten, refurbished a lot of 1970s era materials like The Mechanic and The Equalizer, Magnificent Seven. He even wrote Jack Reacher 2. And the dialogue and the storytelling is very much kind of in keeping with those things and is almost working against, I think, the high caliber of the cast and the director. It stars Maggie Q as an assassin named Anna. She was rescued as a child in 1991 by Samuel Jackson, the assassin who trains her and takes her under his wing. His name is Moody. We fast forward 30 years later to Bucharest. They're on a mission that's successful. We learned a few things about them. They're in no need for extra cash. They actually both live in London. He has this palatial estate. She runs this antique bookstore that he owns. They're celebrating his 70th birthday. She learns that he might be going back to Vietnam, a country she has vowed to never revisit, even though he urges her to face her past. And there's a minor dalliance with the introduction of Michael Keaton's character Rembrandt, who has a flirtation in the bookshop with Anna, even though we know he's probably up to something else. Skip to Samuel Jackson showing up dead in his home, and therefore Anna is forced to go to Vietnam to figure out what case he was working on. There's a large kind of MacGuffin in the plot as all the very obvious pieces come together. Even though Wenk's screenplay is trying to be smart by two-timing us two times, which you'll know what I mean if you get to the end of it. Maggie Q, it's probably surprisingly the best use of her skills thus far, coming off of last year where there was Fantasy Island and Death of Me. She is kind of, as the poster art even suggests, modeled after Maggie Cheung and Irma Vep almost, in this kind of slinky catsuit. But the film doesn't really try to fetishize her in that way, which is interesting because if we think back on kind of Asian American women as seductresses in 90s films like Atia Carrere, who, you know, was more often than not kind of the villain. But the writing what kind of demands the eloquence of something like a True Lies and the sexual banter and extreme violence that kind of happens, which ends up feeling a little bit exploitative. Michael Keaton tries to inject a lot of comedy. He doesn't really have any chemistry with Maggie Q, arguably, but they do the best with what they're given, and it ends up in a kind of derivative Pritzi's Honor type standoff. Samuel Jackson's entertaining in his brief moments, kind of in Shaft mode. It was shot by David Tattersall, who, of course, lends the Star Wars prequels from the late 90s, early 2000s, as well as The Green Mile and Campbell's last film, The Foreigner. Overall, just kind of surprising, given what you might expect based on the presentation and the various delays of the film to make it to theatrical release. Otherwise, I would give The Protégé 2.5 out of 5 stars. Thank you.
Hey, this is Eric from IONCINEMA.com. If you want to support us, subscribe below. For more reviews, interviews, film festival coverage from Sundance, Cannes, Toronto, you want to check out these guys on this side.